Her hand shook as she held her wine glass, the liquid trembling like it felt the weight of what I had just said. My words had ripped apart the little illusion of control she still thought she had. That well-rehearsed script she and Frank must have cooked up? Gone. Silence filled the space instead, thick and heavy. She had no defense against the truth I laid out in front of her, piece by piece. Her lies, her dodging, all of it started to crumble the moment I took the reins of the story she thought she was still directing. But hang on, before I take you deeper into what really happened, drop a comment below and let me know where you're tuning in from. And hey, if this kind of story hits close to home or just keeps you hooked, make sure to subscribe and tap that notification bell so you do not miss what comes next. Anyway, for 10 years, Olivia and I were side by side. We built a life that felt solid, full of shared goals, quiet laughs, and the kind of love that seemed built to last. I can still see us in those early days, completely in sync. Whether it was something as simple as grabbing snacks during a late-night grocery run or hopping in the car for a last-minute road trip, we did everything together. It was more than love. It felt like we were truly connected, like nothing could ever come between us. But things started to shift. At first, it was subtle, barely noticeable. A dinner skipped without much explanation. Showing up late more often. Her excitement for our usual routines started to fade. She used to love that pottery class. We'd spend Sunday afternoons painting little tiles for our Christmas village. It was our thing. But suddenly, those moments disappeared, replaced with distance. Even her laughter, it used to be loud and real. Lately, when we were alone, it felt forced. Hollow. I told myself it was just stress. That after so many years, this was probably normal. But in my gut, I knew something had changed. As time passed, the signs became harder to miss. Olivia started coming home later and later. Always with a reason, work stuff, meetings that ran long, or traffic. And then there was the wardrobe shift. The old comfy clothes were replaced with bolder, tighter outfits. I wanted to think maybe she was just gaining some confidence, but a voice inside me said, this isn't about her. This is about someone else. Then came Frank. Just a name at first, a guy she worked with. She mentioned him like she would anyone else from the office. Casual. No big deal. But before long, I started noticing how often his name came up. How she lit up when she talked about him. That spark in her eyes. I hadn't seen that in a long time, not when she looked at me. And every time I saw it, it cut a little deeper. I tried to talk to her. Gently, at first. Told her I felt like we were drifting. That something seemed off. But she always brushed me off, cool and calm like she'd practiced the response. You're just being paranoid, she'd say. Frank's just a friend. Don't let your insecurities mess up what we have. It was the way she said it that stung the most. So smooth. So detached. Like my concerns didn't even deserve attention. But I knew what I felt. I knew what I saw. I was losing her, piece by piece. Everything hit a breaking point one night when I happened to glance at her computer. An email was open, innocent at first glance, but the tone, the way she wrote to him, it was way too familiar. Too warm. That was the final push. I couldn't pretend anymore. I needed the truth. That is how I ended up sitting across from Chris Sullivan, a private investigator. Never in a million years did I think I would be hiring someone to follow my wife. But there I was, spilling everything, every gut feeling, every red flag to a man who made a living uncovering secrets. I was sick with worry, but weirdly relieved, too. If she was cheating, at least I would know. Still, a part of me kept hoping maybe I was wrong. Maybe the woman I'd shared 10 years with hadn't destroyed everything we built. But that hope didn't last long. Chris Sullivan delivered the truth in cold, hard detail. Photos. Logs. Messages. All of it pointing to the same thing. Olivia and Frank were much more than coworkers. Their connection went way past friendship. There were no gray areas, no maybes. It was all right there in black and white. The pictures told a story I never wanted to see. The way they sat together, close enough to touch, brushing hands like it was second nature. The way she laughed around him, real, genuine laughter I had not heard from her in years. And then there was that one photo I can't forget, Frank gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. A tiny gesture, sure. But the tenderness in it, it said everything. Even if someone else had looked at those images, not knowing the context, they'd still feel the intimacy. Chris's report went further. He included snippets of their messages. Nothing flat out said, I love you, but it didn't need to. The way they wrote to each other, the way they shared bits of their day, little jokes, inside phrases, it was personal. Way too personal for just friends. Frank's messages to her went way past friendly. He constantly showered her with compliments, not about her work or professionalism, but personal things. He praised her intelligence, told her how her smile lit up a room, and said he felt something just being in her presence. And Olivia? She opened up in return. Not just small talk, she poured her heart out, admitting she felt lonely and unfulfilled in our marriage. Those texts weren't playful anymore. They were confessions. Deep, emotional stuff. Things a wife should only be telling her husband. But Frank had become the one she leaned on. The one she trusted with her rawest thoughts. That part hurt the most. He'd taken my place without even asking. And then there were the plans. Frank had suggested a night out, romantic dinner, secluded restaurant, dancing afterward. Not something coworkers do. At first, Olivia seemed unsure, even nervous. You could tell from the tone of her replies. But Frank? He kept pushing. He fed her this narrative that it wasn't cheating. It was about finding herself. You need this, he told her. It's part of your journey. His words weren't casual, they were calculated. They were designed to strip away her guilt and pull her deeper into whatever fantasy he was building. And the more I read, the more I saw how good he was at it. He spun their relationship like it was a fix, not a problem. Told her that maybe, just maybe, this thing between them could even help her marriage somehow. In one message, he wrote, sometimes, stepping away is the only way to really understand what you have. That line stuck with me. He even planted the idea that I might be okay with it. That if I really loved her, I'd want her to be happy, even if that meant letting her go. That kind of talk? That's manipulation. Plain and simple. He played on her doubts, her need to feel seen, all while chasing what he wanted. Things really escalated when Frank suggested a full-blown getaway. Said his wife would be out of town, and it would be the perfect time to sneak away to a fancy hotel. The excitement in their messages was obvious, but so was the scheming. Olivia floated the idea of telling me she was going on a girls' weekend. She was nervous, unsure. But Frank calmed her fears, told her she deserved it. You've earned this, he said. He twisted things just enough to make her feel justified. That's how he got into her head. The report from the private investigator laid it all out, connecting every piece of the puzzle. It showed me just how deep things had gone, and how carefully Frank had worked to pull Olivia in. His promises sounded sweet, but they were nothing more than bait to serve his own selfish wants. And for Olivia, his attention became a kind of escape, a tempting distraction from the life we had built. But with every page I turned, it became clearer just how much damage they were doing. With each message, each photo, each lie, I was being pushed closer to a breaking point. The illusion that maybe this wasn't as bad as I feared? It was gone. What I was staring at now was the cold, brutal truth. Reading that report felt like death by 1,000 cuts. Every new detail dug a little deeper into the trust one had once placed in my wife. Chris Sullivan had done his job thoroughly, painfully so. Photos, message summaries, notes about future plans, it was all there in black and white. There was no way to explain this away. One section focused on their workplace interactions. On paper, it might seem like nothing, two coworkers sharing lunch, chatting, laughing. But the photos told a different story. Olivia leaning in toward Frank, their knees brushing beneath a cafe table, a quick hug in the parking lot. None of it looked professional. It looked intimate. Like a couple, not colleagues. There was one image I'll never forget. Frank brushing a loose strand of hair off her face. His eyes soft, possessive. And Olivia? She tilted her head slightly, smiling at him in a way I hadn't seen her smile at me in years. That look told me everything. The messages Chris included in the report weren't graphic or sexual, but they were soaked in emotional connection. Frank couldn't get enough of flattering her, called her brilliant, beautiful, funny. One text read, "You make my days brighter, Olivia. I don't know how I'd get through the week without you." And Olivia replied with the kind of warmth I hadn't felt from her in a long time. You understand me in ways no one else does. Sometimes, they talked about me. Olivia never outright insulted me, which I guess I should be thankful for. But she didn't defend me either. Frank, on the other hand, took his shots. Called me stiff, unimaginative. Claimed I couldn't give her the life she deserved. And the worst part? She didn't push back. She let it slide. That silence hurt more than any insult she could have said. The final gut punch came in the section about their future plans. Frank had brought up spending a night together while his wife was away. They had already picked out the hotel. Their messages were full of details, what time they'd meet, what excuses they'd use. Olivia worried about lying to me. Maybe I could say it's a girls' weekend, she wrote. But Frank didn't like that. Said it was too risky. Instead, He told her to be honest. Tell him the truth, he said. If he really loves you, he'll understand. He'll want you to be happy, even if that means it's with someone else. Reading those words sparked something in me. A rage I didn't even know I had. Not just at Frank. Not just at Olivia. But at the whole damn situation. Frank's arrogance was something else, but what cut deeper was how willing Olivia was to go along with it. She actually seemed to believe I'd just accept it, that I'd quietly suffer through the betrayal, swallow my pride, and keep her in my life like nothing had changed. The two of them had the nerve to frame this whole mess like it was some kind of twisted intervention, like they were helping me by redefining our marriage. The whole idea was insulting. My emotions were a mess. Part of me felt a tiny flicker of relief knowing they hadn't crossed into anything physical yet. But that flicker didn't last long. The weight of emotional betrayal settled in just as fast, and honestly, that kind of cheating cut even deeper. Olivia had handed over parts of herself to another man. Her thoughts, her dreams, her secrets. That was supposed to be mine. That kind of intimacy wasn't something you could just explain away. It hollowed me out, left this gaping wound filled with anger I couldn't shake. I swung back and forth between heartbreak and pure rage. My mind kept drifting back to the early days, the late-night walks, the shared jokes, the way we used to laugh until we were gasping for air. How did we end up here? What went so wrong? I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab my keys, drive straight to her work, and demand answers. But I knew better. That would just give them control again. If I wanted to take back the narrative, I had to be smart about it. I needed a plan. That weekend, I shut everything else out and focused on preparing for the confrontation. I played out every possible version of the conversation in my head, how she might react, what excuses she'd give, and exactly what I'd say in return. I wasn't just looking to catch her in the lie. I wanted to take away any space she had to twist the truth. I knew they'd rehearsed their little scene, probably more than once. But they hadn't prepared for me. First thing I did was decide on the setting. It had to be our home. Familiar territory. A place where I could stay grounded, no matter what storm hit. I set it all up carefully. Her favorite wine, chilled and waiting. 2 clean glasses on the table, side by side. Everything neat, calm, almost welcoming. It was intentional. I wanted the room to look like peace, right before I broke it with the truth. Next, I printed out the report from the private investigator. Every page, every damning line, highlighted and ready. I rehearsed how I'd deliver it too, making sure I could stay calm. I didn't want shouting. I didn't want chaos. I wanted her to feel the full weight of what she'd done, not because I lost control, but because I didn't. And I wasn't going to let her lead the conversation either. I knew what she'd planned. Some speech about how it was all about finding herself, how this could somehow help us. I wasn't buying any of it. So I decided my first words would cut straight through all of that. Just 4 words. I want a divorce. No long explanation. No build-up. Just a hammer of reality she couldn't dodge. By the time Monday rolled around, every piece of my plan was in place, but waiting for it was agony. Every minute dragged. My nerves were shot. Then, during lunch, she called. Her voice was light, even cheerful. Hey, I was wondering if you'll be home tonight? There's something important I need to talk to you about, she said, sounding like she was about to give a speech she'd practiced a dozen times. I kept my tone steady. That works out, I told her. There's something important I want to talk to you about, too. There was a pause. I could feel her trying to figure out what I meant, trying to read between the lines. Then came her reply, quiet but composed. All right then. I'll see you tonight. After I hung up, something strange happened. I felt calm. For the first time in weeks, the noise in my head quieted. Everything was set. Whatever happened tonight, it would happen on my terms. They had written the first chapters of this mess, but now it was my turn to take the pen. That evening, the kitchen looked warm and peaceful. Soft amber light filled the room, casting a cozy glow over everything. On the table sat a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc, her favorite, still cold, condensation forming little beads on the glass. 2 wine glasses waited beside it, sparkling clean. The whole scene looked picture perfect, like something out of a lifestyle ad. But none of it was real. It was a carefully crafted lie, one meant to mask the emotional explosion that was about to unfold. I sat in silence, waiting. The faint hum of the refrigerator was the only sound, but inside me, everything felt coiled, like a spring ready to snap. Then I heard it. Olivia's car pulling into the driveway. The garage door groaned open. Her heels clicked against the tile as she walked in, each step getting louder. The front door opened. She tossed her keys on the counter with a casual clink. "Hi, honey," she said, cheerful as ever. But there was a flicker of hesitation in her voice, like she could already sense something was off. "Welcome home," I replied, voice calm. I gestured toward the table. "I thought we could talk." She paused, caught off guard. Her eyes landed on the wine and glasses. The smile on her face faltered just a bit. She hadn't expected this. Me, waiting, composed, completely in control. For a second, I saw something crack in her expression. But she recovered quickly, slipping into the part she had rehearsed. "Of course," she said, walking over and sitting down across from me. The first few moments were thick with tension. I poured her a glass of wine and handed it to her, watching as her fingers clutched the stem a little too tightly. She took a sip, probably to steady her nerves. "I actually wanted to talk to you too," she said, her voice trying too hard to sound casual. "There's something I think we need to address." "Go ahead," I said, leaning back in my chair. I kept my voice level, maybe even inviting, but just beneath the surface was a cold control that I knew she could feel. It threw her off. She took a slow breath, eyes flicking away from mine. "I've been thinking about us lately," she began, her tone calm on the surface, but shaking underneath. "About our marriage, and ways we could, maybe, strengthen it." I allowed the faintest smile to tug at the corner of my mouth. "Strengthen it," I repeated softly. Interesting word choice. "Please go on." She paused again, losing the lines she must have rehearsed. "I just feel like we've lost some of the spark," she said, voice trailing. "And I thought maybe we could try to rekindle that. Like a romantic dinner," I said evenly, "followed by an overnight stay at the Four Seasons Hotel Houston." Her face went pale. Her hand, halfway to her glass, froze midair. What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice cracking. I leaned in, locking eyes with her. "Don't insult my intelligence, Olivia," I said, low and steady. "I know everything. About Frank. About the plans. About the lies." Her hand shook as she quickly set the glass down, afraid it might spill. "That's not true," she said, her voice rising, teetering on panic. "You're imagining things." "Enough," I cut in sharply. That one word, just one, shut her down like a switch being flipped. I reached for the folder beside me and slid the stack of printed photos across the table. She looked down and froze. There it was, her hand in his. The two of them leaned in close, his lips brushing her cheek. A moment of tenderness captured in full color. Her breath caught. She looked up at me, face drained of all color. "I can explain," she whispered. "I'm sure you can," I said bitterly, folding my arms. "But there's nothing you can say that'll change what I've seen. What I've read." I tapped the folder. "Emails, texts, lunch dates, late nights. You and Frank didn't just happen. You planned this. Weeks in advance." Tears started forming in her eyes. She shook her head slowly, weakly. "It's not what you think," she said, voice trembling. "Frank and I, it's not serious. It never even got that far." I let out a dry laugh, cold and empty. "Not serious?" I repeated, disbelief thick in my tone. "You were rehearsing how to ask me for a night off so you could be with another man, Olivia. Then you planned to come home to me like it was just another evening. And now you're going to sit there and call it not serious?" She broke. Her shoulders shook as the tears spilled over. "I made a mistake," she choked out. "I never meant for it to get this far. I never wanted to hurt you." "You didn't mean to hurt me?" I said, my voice rising for the first time. "You lied to my face. Again and again. You betrayed me. And then somehow convinced yourself I'd be okay with it. That I'd understand. Like I'd sit back and let you humiliate me." Her sobs grew louder. She clutched the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Please, just listen," she begged. "I'll end it. I'll quit my job. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." I shook my head slowly, my expression firm. "It's too late for that, Olivia," I said. "I want a divorce." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She gasped, eyes wide in shock. "No," she whispered, shaking her head over and over. "No, you don't mean that. You can't." "I do," I said, clear and final. "I've already talked to a lawyer. You'll be served by Friday." Her face crumpled. She buried it in her hands, her cries muffled and broken. "Please," she sobbed. "Don't do this. Don't throw away everything we've built." I stood slowly, the chair scraping across the floor as I pushed it back. "You're the one who threw it away," I said quietly. "The moment you chose him over us." I turned and walked toward the door, her cries echoing behind me. But I didn't look back. The calm, cozy kitchen I had staged was shattered. The peaceful setup was now just a backdrop to the wreckage of our marriage. The confrontation was over, but the damage it left behind would linger, like bitter wine clinging to the back of your throat. I opened the front door and stepped out, leaving her behind in the silence of a home that no longer felt like mine. But then I heard her footsteps, fast, desperate. She caught up with me at the bottom of the stairs. "Please wait," she cried, her voice cracking. I turned. My face probably looked stone cold, but my eyes must have betrayed the weight of everything I felt. "Let me explain," she said, hands clasped in front of her like she was holding herself together. "I swear, it wasn't physical. It never got that far. I know I broke your trust. I don't even know what I was thinking. I was lonely. I felt like we weren't connected anymore. Like we lost something." Her voice trembled. Tears streamed down her face. "Frank made me feel seen again," she said, voice trembling. "Like I mattered. But it was a mistake, all of it. I see that now. I never stopped loving you. I swear." I stood there, not saying a word. Her voice, those words, they cut deep, deeper than I wanted to admit. Hearing her say she still loved me didn't feel comforting. It felt hollow, almost cruel, like the word didn't mean the same thing to her anymore. But still, there was something raw in her voice. Her vulnerability gave me pause. Her words didn't make what she did okay, not even close. But they did shine a light on something we hadn't talked about in a long time, the cracks in our marriage that had started long before Frank ever came along. For a brief second, my mind drifted back to how things used to be. Back when we were still in love, really in love. I could see us walking hand in hand through the park, laughing over some silly inside joke that no one else would understand. I remembered those quiet nights we'd sit and paint those tiny ceramic houses for the Christmas village we used to build every year. Back then, even the smallest moments felt magical, just because we were in them together. But time wears down everything, doesn't it? Somewhere along the way, the magic started to fade. Our laughter turned into polite smiles. Deep conversations became surface-level exchanges. The passion that once burned between us flickered into routine silence. We got busy, distracted. We stopped trying. And yeah, I'll admit it, I had a hand in that. I let the distance grow too. I missed chances to connect, missed signals she probably hoped I'd pick up. But no matter how I look at it, she made a choice. When things got tough, she didn't turn to me. She turned away. "Maybe we both made mistakes," I finally said, my voice heavy. "But you made a choice, Olivia. You turned your back on us." She broke into full sobs then. But I didn't reach for her. I didn't comfort her. I just turned and walked away. The sound of my own footsteps echoing through the house felt deafening. A kind of silence that sticks to your bones. Later, we found ourselves sitting across from each other in the therapist's office. That room was cold, clinical, but not because of the temperature. The space between us felt wider than ever, like we were strangers sitting miles apart even though our knees were only a few feet away. The therapist, this soft-spoken guy with kind eyes, tried to guide us through it. Tried to get us to talk about the things that had led us here. And for the first time in a long while, we actually did. Olivia talked about how alone she had felt. How she missed feeling connected, desired. How guilt had eaten her up inside once things with Frank had gotten emotional. Her voice cracked when she said, "I was selfish. I wasn't thinking about us. I thought I was trying to find something I'd lost, but really, I was just pushing it further away." And as much as I wanted to stay angry, I couldn't deny that some of what she said hit close to home. I'd felt that same emptiness, that same distance. But I hadn't gone looking for someone else to fill the gap. That was the difference. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't hold back. I told her about the sleepless nights, the quiet suspicion, the gut punch of finding the truth laid out in photos and text messages. "It's not just what you did," I told her, steady but broken. "It's what you destroyed. The trust. I don't even know how to start rebuilding that. Every time I try to think about forgiveness, I see those messages, those pictures, and I can't." The therapist listened, did his best to help us find a way through. He talked about honesty, rebuilding trust, starting fresh. But it became more obvious with every session. The damage was too deep. The walls I had built were too high, and no matter how sincere Olivia's regret was, it couldn't bring down what I had put up to survive. On our final day in therapy, I spoke with a calmness I didn't know I had. "I've really tried," I said, "but I can't live like this. Always wondering, always doubting. That's not living." Not for either of us. She cried, but she didn't argue. Deep down, she knew I was right. And just like that, it was over. Our marriage ended. Not with a dramatic fight, but with the quiet understanding that we couldn't fix what we had broken. Too many pieces. Too much damage. The legal part was just as cold as everything that came before it. We sat across from each other again, this time in the mediator's office. The room was quiet and sterile, no warmth in the walls or in the conversation. It was all paperwork and signatures. The final chapter of something that once meant everything. This wasn't the future we had imagined on our wedding day. 10 years ago, we stood in front of family and friends and promised forever. And now, forever had turned into legal terms and asset divisions. The mediator read out the terms. The house, our home, would be sold. The proceeds would be split, though not evenly. Olivia's affair, while not physical, still carried weight in the eyes of the law. The investigator's report told a clear story. Her emotional betrayal, her own confession during therapy, it all tipped the balance. She'd be getting less than half. The rest would come to me, along with the majority of our savings. She didn't argue. She didn't fight it. She just sat there in silence, the same way I had during those long nights when I knew something was wrong and she pretended there wasn't. No anger. No more tears. Just the sound of pens scratching across paper, sealing the end of our life together. She knew what she'd done. No one had to spell it out for her. The consequences were plain to see, carved into every piece of what used to be our shared life. When it came time to divide the vehicles, the decision followed the same cold, logical path. I kept the newer one, the one I'd been making payments on for years. She got the older model, the one we barely used anymore. It wasn't just about cars, it was a symbol, a harsh, simple image of how everything we once built had been split down the middle and handed back in unequal pieces. Meanwhile, things weren't going so great for Frank either. Turns out, his wife had hired her own private investigator. And once she had the proof in hand, the messages, the meetups, she didn't hesitate. She filed for divorce fast, and without mercy. Frank walked away with even less than Olivia did. But here's the kicker, the part that twisted the knife just a little more. After all the promises he made, all the sweet talking and dreams he painted for Olivia, Frank bailed, didn't even look back. She reached out to him, probably hoping for comfort, maybe a plan for the future. But what she got was silence, maybe a cold, half-hearted reply at best. Frank had already moved on, to someone younger, someone new from work. All that affection, that deep understanding he showed her, it was just a tool, a mask. He used her as a stepping stone, and when it no longer served him, he tossed her aside. In the end, Olivia stood alone, her marriage gone, the home she once cherished no longer hers, and the man she risked it all for, nowhere to be found. She had to sit with it, all of it, the loss, the choices, the aftermath. And from what I heard, it hit her hard. Her world, the one she'd traded everything to chase, had crumbled beneath her. As for me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Closure. Yeah, it hurt. No denying that. But signing those final divorce papers felt like the last weight being lifted off my shoulders. It wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about stepping out from under a storm cloud that had followed me for far too long. This wasn't just paperwork. This was the end of a chapter one never thought would close like this. But sometimes, you need an ending to find your way forward. And that's exactly what I did. The mornings stopped starting with dread. I wasn't checking phones, reading silence, or wondering where she was anymore. Instead, I found peace. Simple peace. I took walks in the park. No destination. Just moving, breathing. I got back behind the wheel and took long drives with no particular place in mind. I reconnected with old friends, the kind of folks who remind you who you are, not who you used to be. Eventually, I picked up photography. Nothing fancy, just a cheap camera and a fresh perspective. I started seeing the world in snapshots, moments worth capturing. Weekends turned into something I looked forward to again. I started attending local workshops, even met a few people who shared the same passion. That's where I met her. She wasn't flashy or trying to impress. She just laughed easily and listened like she actually cared. I didn't dive into anything right away. I was cautious, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Like maybe love wasn't off the table after all. Olivia's path went in the opposite direction. After Frank ghosted her, reality hit her like a freight train. She tried dating, sure, but it never stuck. The men she met weren't interested in something real once they saw the emotional baggage she carried. One by one, they walked away. Her nights got quieter. Her calendar, once packed with distractions, emptied out. Most evenings were spent scrolling through old photos, old texts, replaying memories of what used to be. Regret crept in. And eventually, so did shame. She'd sit alone in that house, wondering how she'd let it all fall apart. "How could I have been so blind?" she once said, her voice echoing in the emptiness around her. She had traded something solid, something lasting, for a momentary thrill. And when the dust settled, she was left with the one thing she never expected: nothing. The contrast between us couldn't have been clearer. While I rebuilt, found purpose, rediscovered joy, Olivia stayed stuck. Not because she couldn't move on, but because she couldn't forgive herself. Her own guilt became the prison she lived in, locking her into a cycle of what-ifs and could-have-beens. Our story didn't end the way I imagined it would. But looking back, maybe it ended the way it had to.